Welcome to our Crypto News in 10, a daily podcast bringing you the latest news about crypto in under 10 minutes. Here's what's moving crypto on Monday, April 27th, 2026. Bitcoin briefly touched the high $79,000 overnight, then gave back some gains as Asia and later Europe opened. The spike lined up with two catalysts: headlines easing Middle East risk and day one of the Bitcoin 2026 conference in Las Vegas, the industry's biggest tentpole event each spring. We'll dig into that price action. A US-regulated exchange launching crypto perpetuals today, fresh miner economics on display on the Vegas show floor, why a sitting SEC chair on the Bitcoin stage actually matters, and what prediction markets are saying about whether spot Bitcoin ETFs post net inflows by tonight's close. First up, markets. In early Asia trading, Bitcoin touched roughly 79,188, its highest level since late January, before easing to the high 77,000s by mid-morning in London. Traders pointed to an Axios-flagged opening for talks around the Strait of Hormuz and a broader risk-on tone that also lifted emerging market equities. The timing didn't hurt. Bitcoin 2026 kicked off this morning on the Las Vegas Strip, concentrating media coverage and corporate announcements into a three-day window that often amplifies volatility on both sides. Keep an eye on macro later this week as well. A dense central bank calendar can whipsaw risk assets, and crypto hasn't been immune. Story 2. A big shift in US derivatives access. Kalshi, a CFTC-regulated exchange, is set to launch crypto perpetual futures today in New York under a product it's been teasing as timeless. Multiple industry trackers flagged the April 27 date after CEO Tariq Mansour's video invite, and the move lands just days after Kalshi expanded its commodities hub using Pyth network price feeds. If liquidity shows up, this could be the clearest onshore alternative to offshore perps in years. A regulated venue, dollars in, dollars out, and the same no-expiry exposure that's dominated crypto volumes since 2020. Watch the first week's funding prints and market depth. They'll tell you how quickly traditional traders adopt an on-exchange, US-compliant perp. Quick context on why that matters. Perps are the backbone of crypto price discovery and risk, because they let traders dial in leverage without rolling contracts. Bringing that into a US rulebook could siphon flow back onshore, narrow the basis against CME futures, and, over time, reduce the venue gap that's still visible in weekend and overnight sessions. We'll track order book depth and the maker rebates Kalshi posts as the day goes on. Story 3. Mining economics go on stage. At Bitcoin 2026 today, Nasdaq-listed Bitfufu is launching hosted mining for the new Antminer S21 XP at a headline rate of 9.5 per terahash with an on-site kickoff window running 11 to 11:30 a.m. Pacific. For operators recalibrating after the halving, the all-in cost per terahash, power operations and fees, is the number to model against your own electricity and curtailment profile. Separately, Bitdeer's April product notes put fresh efficiency markers in view. Its SealMiner A4 line is quoted around 945 joules per terahash, underscoring why 2026's winners are pairing new iron with cheap megawatts and flexible power contracts. Before we continue, here's a message from our sponsors.
Need elite developers fast? Elite Coders connects you with rigorously vetted senior engineers in 24 to 48 hours. Staff augmentation, dedicated teams, or full project delivery, we've got you covered. Visit elitecoders.co to get started today.
All right, let's get back to it. Story 4. Regulatory optics you shouldn't shrug off. SEC Chair. Paul Atkins is scheduled to appear at Bitcoin 2026 today, marking the first time a sitting US securities regulator takes the conference stage. Whatever your priors on the SEC, the symbolism is real. The market is exiting an enforcement-first era and moving toward more rules of the road, and a chair engaging the industry in its own forum is another data point. Expect questions around spot ETP supervision, what sufficient decentralization means under the Commission's newer interpretive guidance, and how the SEC and CFTC keep their handoffs clean. We'll clip any headlines from the session for tomorrow's show. And rounding out today, what the odds say. There's live action on whether US spot Bitcoin ETFs end Monday with net positive flows, a tidy proxy for whether the wall of money narrative is back on track after a choppy April. Prediction markets have an explicit contract on Bitcoin ETF flows on April 27th, which resolves positive if aggregate net creations finish above zero, and negative if redemptions win the day. Remember, official tallies post after the close, so the tape can diverge intraday. With Bitcoin whipping around key resistance and Vegas announcements flying, these flow bets can be a tell for how fast advisors and macro funds buy the dip or fade the pop. Let's stitch it together. Price first. Bitcoin's run to the high 79,000s met supply. That's typical into event weeks and macro inflection points. Structure next. Kalshi's Perp launch is a rare US development that could repatriate some derivatives volume and standardize risk controls that offshore venues don't always enforce. Infrastructure. Miners are sharpening pencils on dollars per terahash as newer rigs and hosted offerings aim to survive slimmer post-halving margins. Policy. An SEC chair on the Bitcoin stage signals a willingness to talk with not just at the industry. And flows. By tonight, we'll know whether ETFs kept the bid under this market or stepped back after the morning's failed breakout. We'll be back tomorrow with Day 2 headlines from Vegas and, of course, the ETF scorecard. Thanks for listening and see you tomorrow.